So good to have everybody on board. We have a critical mass of almost 100 people on board. So welcome to our webinar today, Transforming Schoolyards. My name is Adam Lubinsky, and I'm the chair of the APA Public Schools and Communities Division. We're excited to have you. We've got a fantastic panel for you. And I want to start by telling you a little bit about our division. Many of you know, but we have a really important mission to establish strong linkages between the planning profession and public school districts. It's a little known area of urban planning. People don't often think about the importance of public schools and planning, which is why we formed this division a few years ago. We are the newest division in the APA, and we really look to support and strengthen public education in schools, but also to create strong neighborhoods and communities and to increase opportunities for youth and families. We are interested in new members. We have almost 450 members, and we're always looking for more. The programming we do is the heart of our activities, and so we're really glad to have you here today. You can see on screen how to join. You can copy down that website, or you can just scan that QR code. So again, thank you for coming, and we're happy to share at any time more about our division. We are full of programming these days. We have another program 2 weeks from tomorrow. It's called Meet Me in the Cafeteria, Reflections from School Food Planning. And we are working with both the APA Food Systems Division and APA Ohio. So we'd love to have you on board for that. We'll be circulating links for that, but you can also see a QR code that will allow you to register. So excited to have you on board for that. And so now, before we jump into our fabulous panel, I want to make sure we take a quick poll just so we understand who's in the room and what you know about our topic today. So hopefully all of you see a couple of questions on your screen. What type of organization do you work for? And does your local school district have a schoolyard improvement program? We'll take a couple of beats to allow you to fill this out.
But about 90% have taken it. We'll give it just a few more seconds.
Right, we'll give you the results in just a moment. What type of organization? And does your local school district have a schoolyard improvement program? So results will be coming in 1 second. All right, so we have people from many different kinds of places. Almost a quarter of the folks on board work for a school district or a school. About a third of the people work for local, regional, and state government. And then we have almost 30% who work for probably some kind of consultant group or design group. And then 5% of folks work for not-for-profit and 5% from university. So great to have a mix on board. Fantastic. Well, there's lots to dig in here. Second question, if I'm able to see that.
Just scroll down, Adam.
Oh, I think I might have closed it, and rather than scroll down.
Well, I'll share. As far as does your local school district have a schoolyard improvement program? 40%, 46% no, 13% yes, and 36% I don't know, which is kind of consistent with the results that we got from folks who participated in our Google survey before this. So helpful information for our speakers.
That was great. And for those of you who haven't met Shannon, that was the division's programming chair and chair-elect of the division. So thank you, Shannon. So I just want to quickly introduce our panelists. They will do much deeper dives into who they are and what they're doing, but we have an amazing group on board. Danielle Denk of the Trust for Public Land, Darien Clary from Austin Independent School District, Colleen Garland from Austin, and Megan Allegretti from Oakland. So thank you all for joining today, and I'm looking forward to us getting started. With that, I'll turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you so much, Adam, and really grateful for everyone's attendance today. We're really excited to share with you a great presentation. I'm Danielle Denk with the Trust for Public Land, and TPL has been working on community schoolyards for nearly 30 years. So really excited to share a little bit more about our program, and what we're trying to do as an organization is to shift the standard of practice so that community schoolyards, transform schoolyards, become the standard. We feel like every child deserves an opportunity to get outside and enjoy the benefits of nature, and that those benefits directly impact learning and physical health, recreation, opportunities for play, and climate resilience. So I'll go through all of that. But one of the things I want to just say before we start is that I would love to see the folks that said that they didn't have a schoolyard program, or that they were not interested maybe in a schoolyard program, to get that number to be yes, a lot higher, and very interested in having a schoolyard program. So let's see where we are at the end of this, and hopefully you all feel motivated to take next steps. And you have so many experts today who can kind of share where they are in this wonderful process. So we're going to talk about transforming schoolyards, just for a bit of framing. That can also be considered community schoolyards. We often hear of green schoolyards and also living schoolyards. So if you hear any of those terms throughout, they're all under the same bucket of transforming schoolyards. A definition that Trust for Public Land uses for community schoolyards is a healthy, nature-filled outdoor learning space at a school that is open to the community after hours for the community to enjoy. And that will include very specific amenities and also a really important process. So from the amenities perspective, we're looking for active places to play, including passive places to play, and places where kids can feel an opportunity to be creative and engaged. When it comes to nature-filled, that means increased tree canopy, native habitat, often green infrastructure. So really trying to embed a kind of a nature-forward philosophy in schools. And then outdoor learning. Of course, when you have nature and you have opportunities to play, you have outdoor learning, but can you reinforce it through outdoor classrooms and learning gardens and educational signage that really bring the learning to life for students? And then, of course, community. So the place needs to be welcoming with features like welcoming signage, or even, gateways and portals that help people feel like this is a place also for them. Social gathering spaces and art also help to reinforce that this is a space for everybody. So those are some of the amenities that are really important to include. But when it comes to making sure that these places are for everybody to enjoy, that they're well cared for, that's where engagement comes in. So engaging students in this process is critical. Of course, they know how they want to be outside. They know how they want to play and how they want to learn. So empowering them to be active participants in that process is super important. Of course, teachers and school staff have the same perspective, and they understand a lot of logistics. So really getting them involved in the planning process and also the activation process is very critical. And that the community feels like this is a space for them as well is very, very important. Often communities aren't necessarily invited into the schoolyard. So when they are in the beginning, when they are through the process of activation, and even after completion, it does create a holistic uplift effect that drives success. And I can say so with a surety because we've seen the transformation over 30 years. So I'll show a little kind of before and after, and around the perspective of what's motivating us at Trust for Public Land, but also around what the potential is for any schoolyard. So many schoolyards across the country are often blank, usually asphalt, sometimes just kind of barren green space that isn't really improved. These spaces aren't really helping the students be more physically active, and that's concerning because activity levels of students are at an all-time low. Also, children today, as we know, suffer from very high rates of poor mental health, and these spaces can begin to solve for that. And loneliness is a public health crisis. So all these things are really they weigh heavily, right, on all of us, and we can do something about it. So one of the things we can do is to transform our schoolyards by creating a space that is vibrant and playful, activated by students' learning and their opportunity for recreation and play and discovery. We provide an opportunity for physical activity levels to actually increase, for mental health outcomes to increase, and for positive social connections to happen at school. Even access to fresh and healthy foods can happen at school when they are included in schoolyard gardening. So there's so much that can be done by transforming these spaces. And from the health perspective, there's tons of literature on that, and I can add some links in the chat around some of the research that's coming out about the improvements, but they are pretty numerous and pretty well documented. In addition, Trusted Public Land has studied access to quality parks across the country, and we found some pretty staggering statistics that parks serving communities of color are half the size and 40% more crowded. And that means that these spaces are not really serving the communities that have some of the biggest needs for recreation and outdoor play. So by transforming schoolyards, we have the opportunity to put parks within access of so many more people. And of course, we've counted them. We've counted 80 million people can actually gain access to a park if schoolyards are open to the community. And of that 80 million additional folks with access, 20 million are people who currently do not have access. So this is a huge way to solve for the overall park gap across the country. And, doubling down, of course, on the investment that's happening at the school when it's also a park, it's multi-benefit, right? And then from the facilities perspective, also, the schoolyard can often meet a facilities demand that might not be met within the, classroom walls, within the school building walls. So spaces that are like amphitheaters or spaces that are thought of as gymnasiums, outdoor picnic areas, all those can take the kind of the pressure off of the planning that needs to happen within the school walls. And so that's really important to also kind of take in mind as you're thinking about the equitable outcomes in terms of facilities planning, whether it be park facilities or school facilities. From the kind of climate perspective, we know that these asphalt school grounds are contributing to heat island impacts. These spaces can be as up to 120 degrees in the peak of the summer, and even in September or even May, when school is just getting back into session or just kind of wrapping up their sessions. It can be extremely hot, and those impacts are having direct kind of impacts on student learning. And there's a direct relationship between exposure to extreme heat over 90 degrees and the number of days of that exposure, and related to academic outcomes and standardized tests. So if a student, for instance, is exposed to extreme heat for 5 days in a row over 90 degrees, the studies show that that same student will have a 5% drop on their academic test scores. That's pretty staggering. So we can begin to solve for it through lots of different factors, air conditioning, of course, being critical, but the outdoor environment can really bring down the temperature of the school. So if we can think about these spaces that can be up to 100 degrees and bring them down with tree planting, we can actually save 17 degrees of temperature. So another before and after image, these trees are still being established, but as they grow, we're hoping that this will create a 30% tree canopy increase across the schoolyard. That, together with cool pavement and also some shade structures, can do a lot to bring down the temperature. In addition, stormwater management is really critical in many different cities, and in New York City in particular, there's combined sewer overflows. And so these schoolyards have been designed to manage stormwater as well. And over the years in New York City, Philadelphia, and also Camden, New Jersey, where we do a lot of stormwater management, there's been over 100 million acres of basically 100 million gallons of stormwater that have been kept out of sewer systems. And this stormwater can often become combined sewage. So think about the water quality improvements in many of the riverways adjacent to these cities. It's been pretty substantial. And so in addition to all of these things, there's less puddles on the ground. Air quality has been improved. And then those opportunities for students to feel directly related to the climate change and the adaptation that's happening around them is really, really powerful and inspiring. So we're always leaning into those kinds of improvements. So I've showed a lot of images of asphalt lots, but many schools have green spaces that maybe aren't really implemented or been developed in a way that really supports outdoor learning. And so an example here is the Scott Elementary School in Atlanta. They have lawn all around their school, and they even have some nice trees, but they don't really have a place for the students to go outside and take advantage of these spaces. So through transformation, and this is just one example, simply putting in pathways and gazebos and play areas. This space is now activated for learning, and it's activated for recreation. And now the teachers will come out frequently with their students and they use these spaces. Plenty of other examples exist. I love this one in Vermont, where you can see this image of students on sleds in the forest. Well, that forest is directly adjacent to their school. And now that forest has been conceived and used as an outdoor classroom. And, no matter what the weather is, they're going out there and they're learning directly outside. And, the laboratory for learning in nature is endless. Certainly enhancing STEM education, but also evidence shows improving social emotional learning outcomes, improve academics. I mentioned the heat reduction. We're also getting I can go through this a little bit more, but we're seeing some pretty amazing numbers in terms of academic outcomes when students have access to the outdoors every day. So taken together, a community schoolyard is advancing all of these outcomes at once in one place. And I think it's hard to find many public space interventions that can do so much in one place for so many people. So we're really motivated, as I mentioned, to make this the standard, and super excited by all of you on the call today who are already, some of you are already in this journey, some of you are just starting it. We want to help you take those next steps. We're motivated, of course, as you all are, about the STEAM learning opportunities of being outside. And all of these kind of statistics on here about, when kids are outside learning in nature, they're exposed to STEAM concepts in real time, so they learn them better. They improve their environmental citizenship behavior. So that kind of results in not as much maybe, littering, or maybe taking a little bit better care of plants around them, those kinds of behaviors. Also are pro-environmental behaviors. Also really interestingly, research has shown that students who have outdoor opportunity for learning and play feel more connected to nature and actually pro-social environmental behaviors among themselves. And even improvements in cognitive development, social emotional development. So it's not just about how students feel about nature, but it's also about how students feel about each other and about themselves. So that's really, really powerful and so important when you think about everything that children are facing today. As an organization, our theory of change is to make this standard and recognize that ultimately we know that school districts and partners are really interested in these academic outcomes, grades, standardized test scores, suspension rates, and so forth. We have a lot of evidence that exists that when a community schoolyard is implemented, that there are certain outcomes that are very well established. But what we're doing, through our research and our evaluation process is trying to find the pathway between all of these inputs and getting to a clear pathway to these outcomes. And I will say that there's a study that will be released. We've been working with a researcher for the past, almost 5 years. And he's studied all of this in our New York City program and has found that the model that we've been using actually does result in a reduction in suspension and sort of student or school level crime. And I think his statistic was close to 6 to 7% reduction. And then also an improvement in mathematics. Didn't see as much of a movement in ELA, but with mathematics, to around 6 to 7% as well. And these numbers moved even more for more vulnerable populations. So pretty exciting information. The study is still going through peer review, but it did look at 141 schoolyards in New York City. And so it's considered at this point to be one of the most comprehensive public open space studies of all time. And we're really excited to support him in helping to share the news about this study. There's so much more that he has in this study, but this is some early finding. I wanted to kind of, preview it with you and promise to follow up when that research is actually published. In terms of what we heard from you, and Shannon, thank you so much for sending out this survey. We heard that there are some barriers that some of you face in terms of actually having community schoolyards become a standard in your district. Things like maintenance and open access, funding, of course, and implementation. And I think what we're hoping to do in this presentation today is to share a little bit more about how these things have been overcome, and certainly in Austin and also in Oakland. And also to say that Trusted Public Lands experience over the many years is really framed around trying to break down these barriers so we can continue to help school districts have success with these programs. What we do is we help school districts plan where they can have the most impact. We have lots of tools. I can share some of those tools later. We also help demonstrate what that impact looks like. So whether it's a couple projects or, a comprehensive program like in New York City, where we've done 220, or I guess 230 practically schoolyards, it becomes a framework for knowing that this is successful, that this is something that's possible, and also for school districts to learn what they need in order to make it successful and possible. And then we work to evaluate these outcomes. And so that as we continue to work with those school districts, they continue to have stronger results in the area where they want to have results. And then at the same time, we're advocating for public funding. So that can come together in a lot of different ways. Most recently, we worked on the the Living Schoolyard Coalition, and we're really pleased by the groundswell of interest in schoolyards in Los Angeles. And now there's funding from $1.7 billion in funding for schoolyard transformations in Los Angeles, which is incredible. We've also had some successful advocacy, of course, in Oakland, and maybe Megan will share a little bit more about that. So trying to bring dollars to the table, of course, is part of the solution. So we're there with you on that. And then thinking about how to scale up success across the entire district. So, whether it's board policies, whether it's design guidelines, whether it's a series of best practices or even training to support your staff and knowing how to do this well and continue on. We are here to be a supporter in that effort. So just wanted to kind of share a little bit of that. And a little background. So I mentioned that we've been doing this work for 30 years. And in that time, we've transformed over 300 schoolyards, connected over 4 million people to a park within a 10-minute walk. I think this number, about 40 million gallons, is a little old. I think it's 100 now. How are you? And then planted tens of thousands of trees across the country. So, really exciting to see this work in places that are shaded green. These are places where legislation and advocacy efforts are underway currently. So we're looking at, trying to find more pathways to additional funding in all those places. And my last slide is just to kind of double down on, the essential components for a successful program. There's 4 real big requirements. One is that you have to have a shared vision, and it has to be shared by many people. Obviously, the school district, if your parks department is on board, your city's on board, municipal partners are on board, that can really create the infrastructure for a public-private partnership. We've helped those come together in many different places across many different players who maybe aren't used to all being in the same sandbox. Well, we want to help them get on the same sandbox because we find that a lot of times folks have the same goals. Diverse funding is a really important aspect of having a successful schoolyards program because these cost money and they want to be sustained over time. So you want to be able to have confidence that what's put in is going to be well cared for and well used. It doesn't have to be a huge lift, but there's some recognition that funding needs to be there. And we're there to help you in that process, and there's lots of different ways to go about it. Capacity, of course, is huge. You want your teachers and your building staff, your building engineers and so forth to really feel ownership over the space so that they will lean into the kind of maintenance and stewardship that's needed to make those successful. And then part of it is also designing around durability. These are very, very heavily used spaces. So there's some practicality in that is very important to incorporate. And then training and tools so folks can embed the kind of long-term capacity over time. And then ownership, the direct ownership, but even the kind of emotional ownership of the space is very important. So community being involved in activation, and then a continual open dialogue between the school and the community drives success over and over again. I mentioned those schoolyards that have been successful in New York City for so long, and it's because there is a true sense of ownership. And I think I'm talking too much, so I'm going to move on and pass it off to Darien and Clary to share more about the amazing program in Austin. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. I cannot wait until your study comes out. That is incredible. So I'm sure we're all sitting on the edge of our seats. We look forward to that. So hi, everybody. I'm Darien Clary, and I'm here with Colleen Garland, and we're going to talk about our experiences at AISD, Austin Independent School District, which is Austin's public school system. Next slide. So I am the director of sustainability for the school district. And so I help set vision and strategies to move sustainability forward at AISD through our operations, through teaching and learning, and through communities. And so one of the people I am delighted to work with so much on this effort is Colleen. Colleen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Colleen Garland, and I'm an outdoor learning specialist with Austin ISD. I work closely with academics as well as our social emotional learning and cultural proficiency and inclusion departments to kind of, along with facilities as well, of course, to kind of integrate our outdoor learning spaces into our students' day-to-day experiences.
Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so today we're going to share a few things. So we've been working on this journey for quite some time and continue to find new opportunities. We encounter challenges, and we work with staff, schools, and partners to find solutions, both in supporting and developing green schoolyards as educational spaces, and also for keeping these spaces open to the public after school hours to provide critical green space to our urban communities. And so we'll talk about some of this today, and especially hope to touch base on some of the interests that you expressed in the registration survey. So we're going to talk about administrative framework and policies, funding streams and partnerships, and then some of the challenges and solutions that we've encountered along the way. All right. So let's talk about administrative framework and policies. So the next slide will show sort of how we're staffed to really think about schoolyards and their role at the school district. Of course, the people who are in this work all the time are our 3 outdoor learning specialists, Colleen, Mandy, and then a part-time specialist that just joined our team. We're excited to have her, Joanna. There's also, of course, a lot of coordination with our urban forester, Sydney, and I'm also involved on the operations side. We also collaborate with a lot of different departments at AISD. So I listed some of those here. Construction management plays a big role, of course, facility maintenance, our STEM department, social emotional learning, cultural proficiency and inclusion, and sustainability. I'll hand it off to Colleen to share the next bit of information.
Okay, so sort of in support of what Danielle was talking about earlier, that we know that having these green spaces, and public access to these green spaces at our schools have improved academic outcomes, improved physical and mental health, and also offer a place for community gathering, beneficial play. We have one infographic here and then a QR code where you can find more supportive infographics to share that research. This is through the Children in Nature Network. So this is sort of our why, why we know this matters and why AISD has made a commitment to incorporating this into our schools and programming. Okay, so here we have incorporated or showed how. Sorry, I'm going to catch up with my notes here. We have this supportive graphic from Children Nature Network, again, shows the benefits of green schoolyards. And then also some of you from other school districts may recognize this wheel here that is our, it's provided by the CDC that shows this whole school, whole community, whole child collaborative approach. This is for us in Austin, that we call this our coordinated school health plan. But you can see in the graphics between school health and green schoolyards, which are the infrastructure piece, how those overlaps really support each other when it comes to family engagement, community engagement and involvement, social and emotional wellness, and physical activity. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we've got our why. And now for our how do we make this happen district wide? Because we know that this takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of resources and commitment, it takes a lot of people. And so when this happens organically, we see that happening usually in schools that maybe have a large supportive PTA or maybe more wealthier parts of cities. So in order to address those inequities, we infuse this into our educational specifications. Starting in 2017, we passed a bond where we were modernizing schools and remodeling, partial remodeling and full modernizations of schools, and incorporated outdoor learning into that, into the ed specs at that time, to make sure that all of our schools, regardless of resources or volunteer networks, have access to these spaces. So that's in our ed specs, our design specs, and our project development manual. And then the policy side, which is that second graphic there where it says schoolyards, those are signs that are on all of our schoolyard spaces that show our policy that all of our spaces are open to the public outside of school hours. So we do have some jointly owned properties between Austin ISD and our local parks department that are open all the time outside of school hours as well. But regardless of their park status with our parks department, all AISD facilities are public spaces outside of school hours. So we have a policy for that. And then that last graphic shows our project, our bond project design and community engagement. So with each of these projects, we're working with communities and school teams to make sure that what we're installing is what the community desires. So we're not just dropping in our ideas into any community. We offer menus of choices and education on all of these different amenities and make sure that we're providing what the community wants. Okay, next slide.
So something else we have in place is a way for schools to request a review for their projects that they want to do. So this is called our new project request review, and it's evolved over the years. There have been a lot of lessons learned. It started as what we called the Schoolyard Improvement Review Committee. Basically, it was a call before you dig service so that schools could have guidance about where to site a project on their schoolyard, maybe what to avoid in terms of blocking drainage or things like that, upcoming construction that might impact their project, and resources that might be available for support. After some projects that didn't go through this process, it was brought to light that we actually do have a district-wide policy that says any donation, regardless of the value, that's predicated on a physical change to the district facilities or grounds, has to be reviewed and approved by the Office of Construction Management before they'd move forward. And so our internal conversations at AISD, recognizing that policy is something we needed to honor, really helped us strengthen conversations between our folks, many departments who want to see outdoor learning have support, between construction management and our facilities and grounds folks. So this process is still in place, but now it has better synced up communications for really looking at those projects and making sure they're designed and cited in a way that's going to last for a long time, and serve those students and community well. And then let's see, I think I'll hand it to Colleen for collaborations.
Okay. So this shows some of our partnerships. Of course, we don't do all of this alone. We work really closely with the city of Austin. Some of you may be familiar with the Nature Everywhere communities through the Children in Nature Network. Austin was one of the pilot cities where that was launched. And at that time, it was called Cities Connecting Children to Nature Initiative, which is a bit of a mouthful. So we work really closely with some folks in the city on that initiative, and together we established a Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, and that was signed on by AISD as well as the city's mayoral office to show that our commitment to all children's right to spend time outside and experience these beautiful, make memory making opportunities when they're outside. And then using our city facilities as well as school facilities as places where we can make those experiences come to life. As I mentioned, we also have a joint use partnership with 21 of our sites. We have 116 AISD facilities, but 21 of those are shared ownership between AISD and our city parks department, which means we co-manage and there's also co-funding for those sites. And so that helps that our parks department can help make investments into those sites as well. All of them have public access regardless of park status. They're all public spaces. And then we also work with our city to establish this Green School Park program, which is one of our strategies in meeting that Cities Connecting Children to Nature initiative, now called Nature Everywhere. If you're part of one of those communities, you know what that means. But we switched from, we used to do kind of a top-down approach when it was new and we introduced Green School Parks. We had 3 pilot sites. And when we were doing the top-down approach, where we were targeting schools and wanting to provide or create green school parks for them, we successfully piloted 3 in 3 years. So it was slow going. We moved on from there to a self-designation process where schools that are meeting what is required to be a green school park, again, all of our schools are public parks out of school hours, but green school park is a special designation, meaning they have an outdoor classroom, active garden, could be a produce garden or habitat garden, pollinator garden, rainwater collection of some kind of green stormwater infrastructure, and then at least 4 other features that can be, trails, nature play, chickens, whatever the campus is doing. So they tell us, or sometimes we just know that's happening and we say, you know what, y'all are a green school park, and you get this sign as an award and designation to show off the work that they're doing. So once we switched to a self-designation, we went from 3 in 3 years to now we're up to 19 just in the last about 1 year since we switched to self-designation. So that's really working a lot better for us in gaining more green school parks.
Great. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about funding streams and partnerships. As Danielle mentioned, it takes a lot of different funding sources to make this come to fruition. So we'll talk a little bit about funding for infrastructure and then some of our activation partners. So the next slides shows some of the organizations that come to the table in a big way. So we had really a lot of success in putting dollars behind outdoor learning infrastructure with 2 bond programs. So that was the 2017 and the 2022 bond programs. Together, they totaled about $3 billion. Not all of that was for outdoor learning, although that would be the dream. It was to build buildings, build new schools. And so part of that, because we had done the work to get outdoor learning in the educational specifications for the school district and the design manual, that meant that information was implemented on these major construction projects. So that was one way to get real dollars behind that for our schools. We also have a great partnership with the city of Austin, and they have urban forest grants, and they have been giving us different grants over the years. Since 2021, we've had $2.5 million in grant funding from them, and that is to install trees and irrigation. So it's part of our reforestation program. It also has funded our urban forester position. She's just finished her first year, year 1 of 5 that's funded. It has also funded library books in our libraries. And Colleen, do you want to talk about the next 2?
Sure. One, I would just like to say choosing the library books that were tree related to go out to our urban forestry grant schools was just so much fun, and knowing that those libraries are well equipped to enjoy their new trees. So other funding sources are, like I said, the City of Austin through the Cities Connecting Children to Nature initiative. And then also we have local organizations like the Austin Parks Foundation, Austin Public Health, and the National Wildlife Federation. So we have a kind of patchwork of grants from there, from those sources. And then we also received a $2.15 million Department of Education grant through Congressman Lloyd Doggett in 2023 to implement outdoor learning projects across the district that maybe aren't being hit with the bond or targeted by the bond. And that is helping us to help out about 30 schools with outdoor infrastructure, in addition to funding a new outdoor learning center for the district that will have, will provide free field trips district-wide to all the students in AISD to come experience that through about $500,000 from that grant. Slide. Okay, so here is some of the patchwork of funding that we get through the city. We have EcoRise, which works directly with students on student-led projects where they have audits at their school, and then using those audits put in requests for grant funding that EcoRise will award to the student projects. We have funding through our Watershed Protection Department. They have an educational arm that provides programming, and then also grant funds for things like rainwater collection or rain gardens at our schools. The National Wildlife Federation Monarch Heroes program has been really helpful for our campuses. And then our city also has an annual grant called Bright Green Futures grants for sustainability projects through our Climate Action and Resilience Department through the city, that they award lots of grants that are $3,000 each to different campus projects. So those have been really helpful at the campus level to have those resources available. And of course, we have PTAs as well. So what some of these partners do for us to help activate, we don't do that all alone either. We have a lot of partners that help us activate these spaces once they are created. We have a local nonprofit here called PEAS, which stands for Partners in Education, Agriculture, and Sustainability. They're currently in 29 of our campuses, doing direct programming for produce, gardening, and edible education, including kitchen programming, and a handful of those schools that receive PEAS programming. Most of PEAS programming comes at no cost to the schools. They're also grant funded. So we can make sure that the schools receiving PEAS programming are ones that need that extra support. PEAS also recently wrote a guidebook for outdoor learning, which is really, really helpful for us because most of the folks who are in PEAS are former AISD teachers, so they know their audience and wrote the guidebook for outdoor learning. And so through part of that federal grant we received, we were able to purchase those guidebooks for every one of our elementary schools. And we're currently rolling that out, the guidebooks and trainings to go along with them for our teachers receiving them. We also have, so PEAS that offers trainings, but we also receive trainings. Our teachers receive trainings through the National Wildlife Federation, EcoRise, and then AISD staff, such as sustainability and outdoor learning staff.
So Colleen, I think you're going to take this section to start with as well, but we're going to talk a little bit about challenges and solutions. We'll spend just a little bit of time on this because I know we're running up against time, but this might be some ripe information for the Q&A later too. So Colleen, do you want to take it away with the campus buy-in?
Sure. So I already sort of talked about this earlier when we moved from a top-down approach to school self-designating. That really helps know that helps us know which schools are interested. We don't want to force anything on a school, so we try and engage with the community, make sure that anything we're providing is desired. And then we're not just plopping in amenities that people are wondering, like, what happened here? Where did this come from? So it comes with wraparound support. It's not just infrastructure. It is also training and education and community input. So we know that we're going to have buy-in because we have success when the campus is committed to what outdoor learning amenities are there at their campuses. Next slide. This has been a really hot topic for us, and I imagine for many other districts around the country right now. So public access and fencing. So this is new for us, that we have a state mandate that we have to fence all of our school properties now, which is challenging when all of our school properties are open to the public by policy. So we have the state mandated for security that we all have to have, that also all of our schools have to be fenced. That mandate was unfunded. And so not only does it present a challenge for access, it also created a funding problem for our school district because we also have to figure out how to fund all that fencing. It ranges from about $250,000 to $500,000 per campus to fence them. And it creates issues of a perception of no access when there's a fence. But we do have people have to physically unlock those gates at the end of the school day and then lock them back in the mornings. For during the school day, they remain locked, and after school hours, they are unlocked. Since this is new, we're working through some of those challenges ourselves right now of making sure that all of our principals and school staff know about the rules of locking and unlocking, and that they need to remain in public access. Public access has to remain, except for in some circumstances. Of course, we understand that sometimes things come up and we need to kind of address what's a nuisance versus what's truly a danger, because there's human error in all of this, not just in maybe remembering to always unlock gates, but also in the perception of what's truly a danger versus a nuisance, like littering versus something that's truly dangerous. And we have only one school where we've had to limit access. Otherwise, the default is public access. So solutions for that are signage and better communication that we're working on, and also possibly a progressive warning system for the schools that are reaching the point where we might have to limit access for extreme circumstances. Based on San Diego, we're looking to them right now about what they're implementing and how that's working to maintain public access, because fencing by accident creates dog parks. So we spend a lot of time talking about dog poop and gates. So we can answer questions on that later if anybody has any. Darien?
Yes. So another piece that we've been challenged with is maintenance. So you can build all these beautiful spaces, but you also have to maintain them. And so in the past, generally, we followed you install it, you maintain it, meaning if the district installs it due to a major construction project, because outdoor learning is now included in those, then it would be on the district to maintain that feature. If a PTA or external organization installs something in a campus, generally it was on the campus. And we're finding that there's a little bit of overlap. There are some things that might still be on the campus to maintain if they install, but other places where the district can really step in and help if we plan for it, build our capacity, and have the proper training. And so we're working through that now. Luckily, we have Mandy, who's on the webinar today and part of our team, who's really helping syncing up that design and maintenance piece. And then we are able to take those lessons learned and put them back into our specs so that hopefully we can keep improving on how things are designed and have proper training for our staff to maintain them. That is an ongoing conversation. And then I think, forthcoming, something that's really going to help is Mandy's creating a catalog of outdoor amenities. So designs or features that meet a standard for longevity, ease of maintenance, and her guide will include pricing too. So if schools decide they want to install a feature and are able to pick something from that amenity, we know it's already been vetted and approved. So that would be a pretty quick review time and implementation for them. And we would have confidence in that feature. You're on mute, Colleen.
Thank you. When it comes to safety and comfort, we have found that one of the largest barriers when it comes to teachers taking students outside is kind of the mental barrier of, is this safe? Do I feel comfortable? And for that, one is we have a picture of a bee apiary here. We would never provide that to a school that did not want it. We have certain requirements for any that do, including their own training, but really, so for that, we try and bolster support for our teachers to have trainings in classroom management for being outside, and also just making sure that they feel comfortable in those spaces when it comes to risks versus hazards. But it really comes down to training and education, and also just making sure that they know that AISD has a commitment to outdoor learning, that this isn't an enrichment program just for some students, that it really is, the infrastructure exists so that it's available to all students. And so we need to make sure our teachers are feeling comfortable using those spaces. And that's with providing the curriculum that supports this use of those outdoor spaces, and also answering questions so that they feel comfortable taking kids outside.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Colleen and Darien, and excited to join in here. And I'm gonna hop around a little bit to make sure I'm not repeating things that were already said by all my amazing friends on the call. But to introduce myself, I'm Megan Allegretti. I work as the Director of Program Improvement at Oakland Unified School District in California, which is in the Bay Area. And I like to think of my job as the person who removes barriers that are around like bureaucratic red tape, as well as culture change. And I sit across the operations departments, and particularly in facilities. So you're going to hear me talk a little bit from a different vantage point than Colleen and Darien just talked about. They talked about programming and as well as facilities investments. I'm going to talk a lot about the actual like infrastructure going in. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so Oakland, where we got a lot of land. So I've got about 34,000 kids in our system, very diverse population, and we are the second largest property owner in the city of Oakland. I have 108 school campuses, and to date, we've been able to transition 20 of those and really redo the entire schoolyards to kind of fit this new model that we've been talking about. I want to quickly tap on vision and mission, and similar, I think that to Austin, it's like, how do you embed pieces in your infrastructure of your system so it supports the work. So if you look at our vision, the thinking about the word joy in there is a huge part of what comes out in our work and really supports and backs our work. As well as when you look at the mission, pulling out the whole child idea, which we talked about earlier, as well as eliminating inequality. These are kind of some of the things that I use as a foundation to push the work forward in the district. This is some, mumbo jumbo local stuff around policy, but we have what's called a local control and accountability plan. And in that space, we have a goal. You can see it with the red circle on it, goal number 3, where our students and families are welcomed, safe, healthy, and engaged. Again, we really rely on that goal relating to our work. And in our strategic plan, again, we have this pillar around joyful schools. And then we talk about joy, inclusion, and beauty. So that reinforces the work I'm doing. living schoolyards policy and guidelines. After I'm done talking and when we're in Q&A, I'll drop some links in the chat to all these documents. So in 2019, we passed the living schoolyards policy and had already been in partnership with Trust for Public Land, actually decades before that. We've been in partnership with Trust for Public Land for, I think, over like 50 years in some fashion in Oakland, which is pretty amazing. But they helped us a lot with setting up the policy. The board passed the policy. It was unfunded. It was a commitment to say every school should become a living schoolyard and figure out the money. And then in November 2022, we released the OSD Living Schoolyards Guidelines, which again came out of this amazing partnership with Trust for Public Land, Green Schoolyards America. Like there was just a bunch of different partner organizations that help us create that. So if you want to copy and paste things from these different spaces, they've been really good again to stand on to get the work moving. This is a quick tap on, I know we've already talked about a lot of research and I'll put a link to this report, but I do think back to what Danielle was saying in the beginning of the presentation, why are all our schoolyards covered in asphalt? Why did that happen? And I think we probably all have narratives that we're familiar with or like what we tell ourselves of why that happens. This report that was released in December, and you could just take the word California out of the title and it's probably pretty applicable to almost anywhere in the country. But I found that knowing why the asphalt is there in the first place, if you're working to remove it, it can help you understand where people are coming from about why they might be protecting the concept or worried about this change. And then I can take them on that journey to something different a little bit easier. Okay, this is a little bit repetitious, but I'll try to tap on some of the very specific things in Oakland that I'm really excited about. One of the biggest challenges I face is, okay, so we started pulling money together, which we'll talk about in a minute. How do we choose what it, like different than Austin was talking about around like having the schools submit plans? We do have that around gardening and some different ideas, but the work I'm talking about is like some pretty significant facilities investments. Everyone in education loves a rubric. So I designed a rubric for facilities. I have a team that walks every single site every year, and we score it on a 0 to 4. 4 is world class. 0 is the thing is not even there. 1 is it's horrible. And we rated asphalt, we rated shade, we rated play structures. Do you have a nature area? Do you have an outdoor classroom? And it allowed us to have a baseline of data that we could constantly utilize, right? What if I have money for 5 outdoor classrooms? Like I can sort that spreadsheet, look at the places that don't have it and be able to go there. So the data really made it powerful to create quick action. Then I've been working on developing a team within our operations space to collaborate because we've been trying a ton of new things. So I want to make sure people have space to talk through those ideas, challenge each other, support each other, and project planning. Once we start doing this, again, because it's newer in our system, how do we keep iterating on that, but also collecting what we are doing, copy, paste, iterate, that kind of thing. Shared priorities. We would not be able to do any of this without our partners. And I think this is so much better together, as I think every changes. But Trust for Public Land, like I said, really shaped so much of this work, got us started with the 4 initial sites through combination of grant funding and different things. And we're also partnering with Kaboom. It's a great national partner, highly recommend partnering with them. And they help us with the community engagement, fundraising, and installation. And Eat, Learn, Play is a local foundation in Oakland started by Steph and Aisha Curry. You might know Steph Curry from the Warriors, but they're very committed to this work and have really helped us both strategically and financially move forward. Braiding funding sources. So this is kind of I like to think of this as like check the couch cushions approach. So it's been since I initially didn't have bond funding to stand on. Like we're a system that has a budget shortfall. I saw someone mention in the chat, like, you know, we're talking about like close schools, consolidate school. What are we doing? But this work, our schoolyards have sucked. So this work needed to happen. And we've been able to kind of piece things together, right? So you'll see here, we used some one-time funding through ESSER. We're using extended learning or ELOP, depending on where you live. I don't know if there's different names. We've been able to bring in nutrition services funding so we could update like places where kids are eating outside. We've been able to bring in, again, the outside funding has been a huge part of that, if that's through grants or if it's through private donors that usually funnel through our work with Eat, Learn, Play. And then, yeah, like we even just have solar on this picture. So this is a picture of a site that we have done a lot of work at. Community engagement, just want to like say high level, we prioritize talking directly to the community and to the students and the staff on site early and often. You can see some pictures here, but then we actually include the adults in, that's part of Kaboom's approach, as well as Trust for Public Lands approach, is we have adults actually building the space. So that investment in like, not only am I a kid that I had a dream one day, I got to draw it. And then I like see my parents tell me about like literally creating the play structure or planting the trees or whatever it is. And then I get to play on it. It's a really powerful thing. You can see we've actually done these design jams where we put out a bunch of nature elements. You call this like loose parts play. And we just see what kids do with it. You can see different kids are doing different things, and we try to really design around the ideas that come out of that space, so that we may have kind of like that set. I know Austin was talking about like the set, kind of like this is our what we need to do or expectation on like a basic like install of something. But then, so we have that, but then like, how do you make it unique for each site or part of what they really imagined and dreamed of? Heat mitigation. So I think we've already talked about this a little bit, but I feel very strongly about this. And this is a huge driver of our work and collecting like public support and school board support. You would think Oakland, why do we even need to decrease heat? I've actually taken a reading of 140 on our sites on the safety surfacing areas sometimes. And that's on like a 85 degree day. But the stuff gets really hot, and like Oakland doesn't have that many trees, which might be shocking, but you know, it got clear cut essentially. So we focus on trying to remove as much asphalt as we can, putting in new pervious surfacing. Even when we can't remove the asphalt, we've been using sport court tiles on top for basketball or ground art, things that disrupt that heat and the lack of imagination that asphalt leaves us ending up with. Adding shade. When you put in a play structure, put shade on top of it. I think that's one of the best investments you can make. You already have the contractors on site. You can get pre-approved, like in the state of California, you can get pre-approved structures. Get as much shade as you can when you put in a play structure. How many different spots can you see? If you see in the picture, I think we had 3 on this one. I put up to 5 on some of our play structures because we figured it out. And then trees. I'm really excited to say that through all the partnerships over the last 3 years, we've planted 475 trees in our district. And this year we're going to plant another 300. And we're essentially being able to start the process of re-treeing Oakland through our schools. And trees, I plant them large. I plant them around 7 to 10 feet high already. So the day you plant them, you can get some shade from them. You put benches around them, kids can access them. And you can I put like 60 to 100 on a site and sprinkled them in strategic ways. So yeah, you can be near the basketball court because kids waiting for the next game can sit down and enjoy shade. You don't get it too close, but you can get proximate. So just being strategic about trees. Here's a great picture of the volunteers at one of our builds creating one of the nature areas. This is a nature area when it's done. You can see the different type of like seating, and we did a little bit of elevation. That's some new trees. That's a brand new tree that's planted. That's how big they come in. That's a redwood, I think, in the main part there. Kids enjoying that space. Kids love these spaces so much. Another happy kids picture. Again, you can see here we've got some drought tolerant native plants on the left, those shrubs and grasses. That's all local, naturally or local recycled wood that we get and cut to what we need it to be cut. Sometimes we sand, sometimes we don't too much. Leave some of the bark on. You can see a pathway. We even put in paneling into this one. And that's it. I know we've got maybe 10 minutes for questions. Or Shannon, take it away.
Thank you, Megan. Just a few things before we get into Q&A. We had such an interest from division members in participating in this panel. We could not have everyone, but I did want to give folks an opportunity to shout out other work around the country. So this first one came from the team at Park Hill that worked with Abilene ISD. And this school was inspired by the students' gardening club. And then the second one was submitted by a member who's a planner with the city of LA, but she's on the PTA at Mary W. Jackson Elementary School in the Pasadena USD district in Altadena. And they did a lot of removal of asphalt, worked with a partner group, Amigos de los Rios, in their transformation, outdoor classrooms, improved ADA access, and then, installing pervious pavement instead of, our asphalt issues that we have at so many sites. So I know that there's a lot of exciting things going around with members and non-members around the country. I've had such a joyful time talking with Danielle, Megan, Colleen, Darien on this topic. We just hear them all day long. It's such good stuff. But I know we had a couple of questions that came in during the session. And so, Danielle, is there a particular question that you would like to start the group off with?
Yeah, there were two questions. Thank you for putting questions in the chat and continue to do so if a question comes in. Yeah, there was one question from Alexa about, with school closures and folks kind of leaving the city because the schools don't have amenities. How can they begin to bring in schoolyard improvements like this in a fragmented system? And so, Megan, I think you spoke to that for sure. And I think your search the couch cushions response, which I love, it really does take a creative approach. I think we need to find funding, but we also can start small. I think that especially, if a school district commits as both, Oakland and Austin have done to prioritizing spaces outside, parents can come together and be strong advocates and begin to make incremental change that demonstrate the success. So I would say that if you are, a parent, your voice matters a lot to school districts, and other parents probably feel similarly. And if you're in a school district, you're in a position where you can begin to form alliances with others. Many teachers, want students to have opportunities to get outside. So chances are pretty strong that there's a coalition of folks just waiting to be, brought together around this issue. And certainly we're seeing more momentum with some of the policy change that's happening. We didn't go into this a lot, but certainly California is leading the way with enabling policy right now, which is pretty spectacular, with the 2 bond measures that were passed in November, both in naming schoolyards as eligible. That's really special, and many other states are following suit. Washington State right now has advocacy efforts underway to bring in state level funding for schoolyards, and then also some efforts underway in Colorado, Massachusetts, and we're seeing some exciting kind of conversations and opportunities happening in Pennsylvania. But those are just the ones that we're tracking and being part of. There's probably many others that are underway that we're not aware of. So what would happen then is if the state creates a bucket of funding that names schoolyards as eligible, all of a sudden the school districts will rise to the challenge, and it creates that opportunity to kind of put that vision in front of folks who make the policy at the local level. So we're seeing a groundswell. We're not quite at the tipping point yet, but we're definitely seeing movement. So I think the attendance on this webinar in particular, I think, point to the fact that folks are interested. And I think relatedly, there was a wonderful question at the front about who has a schoolyards program, who doesn't, and who's interested in more. I'm hoping that there's more folks out there now who want to do this. Certainly hearing from everyone today, I'm motivated to be helpful as much as possible. And then there's another question in here about the DOGE cuts and the federal funding freeze. Yeah, I think we all have stories about that. You know, we're seeing it with U.S. Forest Service funding. We're a re-grant partner under the Urban and Community Change Grant, and we have 43 schools, but $18 million that are at risk. You know, they haven't been terminated, but they're at risk, and so that creates a lot of uncertainty. We also have a couple EPA community change grant projects that are also at risk. So, you know, our partners on the ground are feeling these risks directly, and you know, it's hard, but you know, I think everyone's trying to do as much as they can while they can. I'm sure you all have stories too.
Danielle, one more question for you. When do you anticipate the study that you highlighted will be released?
Yeah, so that study I referenced is going through peer review right now. What we're hoping to do is work with a researcher and develop a one-pager, a two-pager that we can put out there, because we feel like these early findings are significant and really compelling. And then, because peer review takes like a year or two, right? So, but we're trying to get to an early release. So I'll send that over to you, Shannon, to share with the group.
Yeah, and we can highlight that in future newsletters. One, I know we had some questions coming in about funding, and I think the group did a nice job of like bond funding, really, really valuable, but you can also bootstrap it. So I'm gonna skip over that one to think about the maintenance issue. I know that this came in a lot during our early survey, and we heard this also here. Did you have any strategic conversations, or did there need to be kind of a rethinking with the maintenance teams at your districts in looking at schoolyards differently, and how did you approach that?
I'll maybe go short, because I know Austin has more than this than us, but one thing, because we're in a younger stage than Austin is. The one thing I would say here, yes, you should be very intentional and thoughtful about how you're impacting the people in your system, the custodian, the gardener, the facilities team, these are significant changes. And I would recommend they need to happen. And I think sometimes when I started, there was just so much fear, rightfully so. I'm taking out your asphalt and I'm putting in all these things that move around and might be perceived as needing to be maintained or repaired more often, either very truly or just perceived that way. And it's scary. And I think so, plan, relationship build, but also I do think a part of it is being a partner to all those friends in our district and being like, I know this is hard, this is different. I'm here with you through this change. And we're going to learn about it and go forward together. And we're going to fix problems that come up. But I could have spent another 2 years trying to plan around maintenance, trying to guess what was going to happen. And I wouldn't have guessed right. I can tell you that. Like getting some of it in, like start. I would say like getting some start. It could be a corner of a spot. When I put in the chat, you could take a site needs all new asphalt. Well, do we really need to put it all back? Is there a corner we don't? Because I've actually found that while we need to adjust some things around maintenance and operations, a lot of it just evolves too. It's just different. It's not necessarily more, it's a different skill set. It's something else to pay attention to. But the world hasn't fallen apart. Mandy, I know you could do better. Probably.
You have a lot of experience on the ground. I'm Mandy with AISD Outdoor Learning. I focus more on the design, infrastructure, and maintenance side of things. My experience has been focusing on the design on the front end will save you a lot of headache on the back end. So We have to think about maintenance. We have to build it into budgets. If you're doing a bond, you need to set aside bond funds for the maintenance of the features you're putting in. Think about the play structures you're putting in. Think about the manufacturer. Sometimes they offer warranties and maintenance service contracts. So pick those to negotiate for those. Same with the shade structures. Pay attention to the warranty periods and make sure you're tracking them so that you can go back and utilize those. Also with maintenance, I am trying to push for no mowable lawn grass anywhere on the extremities of a campus site so that we don't have to waste time on maintenance, like physical time, hours, boots on the ground maintaining. Same with islands. I know that it takes our maintenance crew a lot more time to line trim the islands in a parking lot than it does in a long fence line. So thinking about design in that way can save later. And then after the fact, if you didn't have the chance to catch it in the beginning, creating maintenance plans based on what I call them, like different categories of or buckets of things. So I try to put playgrounds into one, lawn maintenance into another, athletic fields into another, rain cisterns into another, and irrigation, and then start forming teams and resources per category. So if it's like a athletic field, you might have a different fund at your program that can then fund the athletic field maintenance, and it might be a different fund than maybe your outdoor learning team. And then there's more grants available based on those different types of features. So that's just a quick high level view of how we look at it.
Great. And ladies, I know we probably should schedule this for an hour and a half long session because we do have some questions that we didn't get to, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time, both our panelists and everyone that is participating today. Thank you. For the questions that did not get answered, I will try to reach out to the panelists and get that back out to the group along with a link to the recording and or the deck that will get posted on our division website. So check out that. And then a reminder to, if you are interested in school food planning, to check out that next webinar that will take place on May 2nd. And thank you, ladies. I am now within a district that has passed their first bond since 1967. And we included outdoor learning and outdoor play improvements. And so I'm very excited to have an opportunity to follow in your footsteps and do some of that tremendous work. So thank you for being an inspiration to everyone today. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, everyone.